Hi everybody, welcome to Intro to Media Communication. I'm glad you're here. I'm Chris Richardson, I'll be teaching this. Let's get started. I'm excited to share this class with you. It's one of my favorite classes. It introduces all of the major concepts you need to know, whether you're going to be a communication studies major or maybe you're just taking this as an elective. It'll be, I promise you, a worthwhile class. And I have also completely redone it this year. I've taught it for a number of years and I've used certain textbooks, certain practices. With all that's going on, I realized that I needed a bit of a change, and I hope that you will like it. We are going to be using the Keywords textbook, which is sort of like a dictionary, and that's going to just introduce concepts every week. So make sure you look at the syllabus about what concepts we're going to be talking about. For the first week, we only have 2, and so I want you to read the entries on new media and text. So we're going to ask ourselves, after reading this, after discussing it more, what is media, what is new media, and what is a text? You might think you know the answers to these things, but you'll see it's much more complicated, and hopefully we can have fun teasing out some of those intricacies and nuances. So that said, make sure, that you're reading that. I've also decided to use a sort of common narrative for the class, which is Mr. Miracle, which is a super cool comic book if you haven't heard of it. If you're into comics, you probably have heard of it, and I hope you enjoy it. If you're not into comics, don't worry too much. You're not going to be tested on this book. But what I'd like to do is have something that we can all refer to in terms of, the plot, the aesthetics, what's going on. And that way we can talk about these concepts from media studies and apply it to something as we're having discussions, and we'll all be sort of in the loop. What I've found before is that if you don't do something like this, if you don't have a common text, then, somebody's talking about the way things are represented and they, use, Gossip Girl or something, which some people in the class are like, yeah, that made perfect sense. That makes, that helps me understand something. And then everyone else in the class is like, I have no fucking idea what Gossip Girl is, or I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. And so we need some kind of common element. That's why Mr. Miracle. We'll be talking about that. So I encourage you to just read it as soon as you can. It's a, fairly sizable graphic novel, but hopefully, as I said, you enjoy it. And the sooner you read that, the sooner you'll start understanding and being able to make references to it. So we'll talk more about that in the future, but I just wanted to say those are the 2 main texts. You may have noticed we're not meeting in person this week. I've gotten a bunch of emails from different people on campus saying, they either have COVID or they're quarantining or whatever. I don't ever want you to come to a physical meeting if you're not feeling well. And then in order to maintain this class, I'm going to make sure that there's always something available for you online on this site. It won't necessarily be a full lecture. If we're meeting in person, I might just do like a little explanation or something, but there will always be what I call a weekly challenge, and that's a few questions, maybe asking for examples or definitions or clarifications. I try to make it interesting. I try not to make it like, I gave you this information, now spit it back out to me. And so that's why I call them challenges. Usually you can answer in different ways. You can use different things from your experience or from your own readings maybe in other classes, and you can apply it to the questions I ask. And so that needs to be completed before Friday at midnight, anytime before Friday. So I'll put it up at the beginning of the week. You can hand it in, or you can submit it online, on Monday or Tuesday or something, or you can wait till Friday, but don't go any later. And also, I really encourage you not to do it at 11:59, because then that's always when the Wi-Fi breaks. And so, anyway, that's a weekly participation thing. In the class itself, we are going to be working on one project throughout the term. You can work with other people if you want. You can work alone if you want. I've realized that some people work better with people, some people work better alone. I want to make this a good experience for all of those people, whether or not you choose to work with people. And you can also change halfway through. We'll talk more about the project and its details, but basically you're going to be doing a study. So you're going to be planning a study, you're going to be conducting a study, which is a content analysis. And if you've never heard of that, don't worry about it. We'll explain it later. But basically you're going to be counting stuff. You're going to be looking online, or you're going to be watching films, you're going to be listening to music or something. and you're going to decide, I'm going to count these things because it's important. I'm going to make an argument based on the theories that we've talked about, and I'm going to use the things that I've counted as evidence. So I promise you, all of that will make sense in the future, but that's just something to keep in mind. That's the main goal of the class in terms of work, is to produce this study by the end of the course. Like I said, participation, weekly assignments, weekly challenges, due online before Friday at midnight. You can always contact me and have schedule a meeting. You can see on the syllabus where you can schedule a meeting with me. You can also send a question on the Ask Me Anything button, or area where you can post a question anonymously. That goes to me, and the reason I put that up primarily is so that you don't feel self-conscious. Maybe you're not understanding something, you feel really dumb about it, and you don't want to say like, hey, I'm Chris and I have no idea what's going on. I was hoping you could help me and whatever. So if you don't want to identify yourself, the Ask Me Anything button is a good place to just pose a general question, maybe about the class or about the content analysis or something in the future. If I can answer it as a group, I won't know who asked it, but I can see if a lot of people have the same kind of question. I can address it, and if it's if it comes up a few times, maybe I'll do an extra lecture or something like that. So anyway, contact me through email, set up an appointment if you want to, or send me an Ask Me Anything question. Those are the best ways to get in contact with me. We'll see. We'll see week by week how everything is going and whether we'll be meeting in person or not. But like I said, the first 2 weeks at least, we'll be doing this. And so, the big question, what the fuck is media? I think that we should start with that. Usually I go into a few different ways of discussing it, and I have some more examples, but since this is an online thing, I want to direct you to the videos that I'm posting alongside this, and they'll help, hopefully, understand this, and that's what the weekly challenge this week will be in relation to, is those videos below here. But let me just say, David Foster Wallace, great writer, starts this speech he gave at a college once saying that there's a story about fish, and I like it to illustrate media. That wasn't his purpose, but I think it works really well, right? So if you'll indulge me, I promise you'll remember this. It'll help you think about media a little bit better. So there are these two fish swimming in the water. There's another older fish that comes by, and he says to the fish, because these fish can talk apparently, he says, hey guys, isn't the water great today? And then they're like, yeah. And then they pass each other. And then with the two fish continuing on a little bit, one goes to the other one, what the fuck is water? That, my friends, is what we could say about media as well. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense once you start to think about it, right? You would imagine fish understand water, but it's actually hard for fish to understand water if they were thinking and talking and discussing it, because it's all around them, right? Once they're out of water, they're pretty much dead. And so there's no real concept of water because it's always there. Media works in a very similar way. Media is all around us, and we don't notice it until usually it's gone or until something happens, right? So think about Wi-Fi, for example. That's one of the symbols I'm using for this class. It kind of illustrates media in many different ways, kind of like water. It's always there, it seems, but when it goes out, you notice. Suddenly you realize you can't watch shows, you can't contact people, you can't do all of these things that you normally do. I mean, I have my house set up so I can just ask Google to do certain things. I can't do that when the Wi-Fi goes out, and so suddenly you notice, okay, that's Wi-Fi, right? It's a similar thing with media more generally. So I'll also give you a definition of media that I like to use. It's from one of the founding fathers of media studies, fellow Torontonian, from Toronto originally. And it goes like this. So Marshall McLuhan says that media is any extension of ourselves. And that might seem very vague, but you'll see it works. And that's what we'll be using as a general definition of media in the class. So media extends ourselves, us. And it extends us either intellectually, right? Like it allows us to remember more, it allows us to think better. Think about a calculator, for example, right? It extends our ability to do calculations better than most of us could do in our heads. Pretty much all of us could do in our heads. So it can extend our mental capacities, right? You store pictures on your computer, that's a medium, And that allows you to look back at those pictures and remember them more accurately than you ever could if you were just relying on your own memory. So that is a sort of mental extension, right? It's as if we had this huge head that could store all this stuff. Instead, we put it into media or into books or things like that. The other extension, of course, is physical. So you might not think of a car as a medium, but it definitely is. And on some level, it extends your legs, right? It extends your legs so well that you probably would never make the comparison anymore, but you can kind of think about horsepower, right? That's a similar thing. So originally horsepower meant, it's hard to imagine, but think about like you're at the beginning of this, you're either going to buy a car that say has 3 horsepower, or you're going to buy a carriage with 3 horses, and those would be basically equivalent. They would go as far. So you can see how, you're sort of comparing the new automobile to whether it's better to buy a few horses and carry you to places, or to buy this new automobile. There's that comparison because the car extends legs in a similar way that horses extend your legs, right? Like if you sit on a horse, you ride a horse, you can go further and faster than you could with your own legs. Wheels are like super fast spinning legs, and they allow us to go way further than you could ever go on your own 2 feet. Nevertheless, a car helps extend our ability to travel, which we would, if we didn't have cars and if we didn't have other media, we would have to walk, right? Or run, maybe. So in that way, it extends us physically. A knife and fork, you might not think, are media. But if you can imagine for a moment, what does a knife and fork extend? Your teeth, maybe your hands. What would you have to do if you didn't have a knife and fork? For starters, it would be a lot dirtier. But also, cavemen had really big jaws and really big teeth because they were always chomping on things. We've actually gotten to the point where most of us remove our wisdom teeth because we don't need them and because they kind of get in the way, because we're using knives and forks. And so we've adapted to this use of this medium to the point where, our actual bodies have changed because we no longer need big teeth. We can cut things ahead of time before it enters our mouth, right? So that extends our physical abilities. Once you start looking for media, you realize, media is all around you. It's not just maybe you're thinking newspapers, television, these kinds of things. Yeah, those are media. And by the way, media, plural, right? Multiple media. Medium is the one thing. So if you have one medium, if you're using one medium, let's say the book, that's a medium. If you're using multiple media, like let's say computers, MP3 players, cell phones, obviously, those are media, multiple. So that's something to keep in mind because that's one of those freshman mistakes that a lot of people make is, they mean plural, but they say singular or vice versa. So it's a lot to wrap your head around. It seems kind of simple, but again, think about those fish in water, right? It's so much a part of our lives that it's really hard to understand it until we really kind of step back. And it's hard to step back because what are you going to step back from, right? Are you going to not write things down? Are you going to not watch this video, which is through a medium? Are you going to not, collect your thoughts maybe on your notepad or whatever? These are all ways in which we use media all the time, to the point where it's almost impossible not to. Excuse me. Kleenex is a medium that I don't have one right now, but I will in a second. And that, extends your hand. A tabletop extends your lap. If you didn't have a tabletop, you'd have to put things on your lap, right? So it's like a really big lap. In a similar way, a chair kind of extends your ass, right? If you didn't have a chair, you'd have to sit down on your butt. A chair is like a really big, cushiony butt, sort of. Media are so many things. It's much more broad than you might have originally thought in terms of, usually when people say the media, they mean newspapers, television, and those are media, but there's much more to it when you think about extensions of the human body or the human mind. And that's what we're going to be talking about. We're obviously going to be talking about news media, television, movies, magazines, whatever the case may be, music, video games, list could go on. But we're also going to be thinking a little bit about, things like, telephones, chairs, cars, all of these things, airplanes, ships, these are all media as well. And they've significantly changed the way that we live. And sometimes in surprising ways. So there's lots of cool stuff that we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about modern media. We'll also be talking about a little bit more historical media, like, early telephones, early telegraphs, letter writing. You can think about these things and also the way that they've changed over time, because we still have letter writing. I mean, we literally have letter writing, but we also have letter writing digitally, which, we call email. And so things, and now text messaging and a bunch of things. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, it seems. Those are some of the things that we'll be talking about. So for this week, I just want you, as I said again, to read those 2 entries on new media and text. Start reading Mr. Miracle, which I hope you enjoy. And we will get into more and more intricate, interesting things as the weeks go on. I'll let you know when and where we'll be meeting in class or online. You can always look at the website, and you'll always be able to find those weekly challenges on the website. Again, please don't ever, if we're having class, don't come to class if you're not feeling well. If you have to take care of a relative, or if things are going on that just prevent you, I'm never going to penalize you for that. Just if you're in this class, if you're registered, and if you want participation grades, do those weekly challenges. And anyone who's not registered, and if you just want to learn a little bit about media, I hope you'll join us for this class as well. I mean, it's anyone's welcome, everyone's welcome. There's so much that we're going to be talking about. Most people, it sounds like a big promise, but on some level, it will change your life. The more that you think about it, the more that you are able to assess the media around you. It's like a fish discovering water, right? It makes a huge difference the more you understand this thing that is all around you, affecting you all the time. And so, hopefully, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this. I have my PhD in media studies, and I've been, like I said, doing this for a long time, but this setup is pretty new and hopefully interesting and engaging. I hope that you will provide lots of feedback as we go. Don't be hesitant to let me know if something's working well or if something's not working well, because we can adapt and change. I want to make sure that this is a good experience for you. I hope to get to know you, and in order to do that, one of the challenges this week is for you to introduce yourself to me. Now, the challenge, or the more interesting media part about this, which works a little bit better when I do it in person, but we'll see what happens. I want you to think about the different ways you could introduce yourself to me. So this week, especially, we're not meeting in person, so you can't come up to me and shake my hand, which normally would have been just the average way to do things, but things have changed quite substantially. So you can't come up to me. So what would you like to do? I welcome you to do anything that's appropriate to contact me. So you could, my phone number, my office phone number at least, is on the syllabus. You could call me and leave me a message if you wanted. You could send me an email. My email is on the syllabus. You could track me down, it's not hard, on Twitter or Instagram or whatever the case. I want you to think about why you might choose those things. And so I want you to choose one. I imagine for a lot of you it will be email, but it doesn't have to be. Regardless of what you choose, I want you to, say, hi, my name is whatever, and I'm studying whatever, and maybe a couple things that you hope to get out of this class. That would be great to hear. But importantly, don't forget this part. Why did you choose that medium? So if you send me a text message, why did you choose to send a text message, and what did it allow you to do? Maybe it allowed you to contact me really quickly. Maybe it allowed you to voice dictate, which you can't do through certain other ways or something. And what did it not allow you to do? So it didn't allow me to see you. It may seem quite informal, so that also sets an impression. Maybe you chose to try to, tweet out to me and say, hi, my name is whatever, and I'm expecting to do this. Also, make sure you say, why Twitter, right? Again, you don't have to choose that, and I imagine a lot of people wouldn't. But if you do, what does Twitter allow you to do, right? It allows you to communicate publicly, lets everyone see it, but at the same time, and I see a picture of you, it might not be you, it might be an avatar, but it also, it's, again, somewhat informal. It doesn't let you say a lot about yourself or make a huge impression because it's only a certain number of characters, right? So every medium you choose, this is a theme that we'll talk about more and more in class, lets you do certain things, but also prevents you from doing other things, right? You could set up a meeting and a voice chat with me if there's still time available this week. There's a limited number of spots, so if you do try to make a meeting with me, make sure you do it soon. And that allows you to see me. It also makes you stuck in a certain time and place, and if you miss that meeting, then you set a really bad impression, right? But it allows me to see you and hear your voice, and so if you want to be sarcastic or tell a joke. It's much easier to do that when I can hear your voice, as opposed to if you write it down and then I'm not sure if you're being serious or not. These are things that we have to weigh the pros and cons each time. And so I want you to think about that as you choose the medium of communication to introduce yourself. Again, but you're definitely not limited to. You could write me a letter, probably won't get here in time. You could write me an email. You could send me a message. You could give me a call. You could try to set up a meeting with me. All of these are fine and appropriate, but they also have their pros and cons. So don't forget to think about the pros and cons and address them for a moment when you contact me. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to meeting all of you and talking and discussing and doing some really cool projects. And I hope you're as excited. This is going to be a good class no matter what happens, whether we meet a lot or whether we primarily do it online. Don't ever come to class if you're feeling sick or, even if you're just hesitant because maybe you have a slight headache, totally fine. That's totally acceptable. Just make sure you do the readings and make sure you do the challenges. And welcome to Intro to